Tom, what impresses me about you is your ability to explain some very complex betting and mathematical terms in simple terms. So I think you gave the best explanation of betting variance to Simon Knott in your interview a few years ago that I've ever heard. So I am certain that I am going to learn something today, and hopefully people watching this will also learn something. A side note, before I do these interviews, I do a lot of research into my guests, and I do a little mental bet with myself about how long the conversation is going to last. So I've got a little market about how long we're going to be talking for today, and I'm going to show you my my working at the end of it.
Okay, I've got to pick the kids up in 5 hours from school, just to let you know. Right?
You're not far off. Okay, great stuff. So let's get into it then. So Tom, what is the sort of first memory you've got as a youngster that betting was a thing?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been in prediction, but I was in the field of prediction in engineering. I did a long postgraduate research project around how you predict the behavior of very large infrastructure projects. So you could work out how much to spend on maintenance of them. And there's a lot of crossover between prediction in engineering and prediction in sports betting, or the outcome of sports. Interesting that you said earlier, actually, about the ability to concisely explain complicated ideas or concepts clearly, because one of the things I find is people have lost the ability to understand or know their audience. This postgraduate that I did, but when I came out of it, I was probably 10 years into the smallest niche of mathematics, statistics, and engineering, a little niche that a tiny fraction of people that even studied my degree would have experience with. And I have to be able to stand up and explain these concepts at conferences in Denmark and down in Israel and places in a way where the audience doesn't understand necessarily, or doesn't have the experience that I have. And you look at other people and they go straight in on the deep end. They're talking about, I don't know, you know, problems of the way that structures and bridges bend in a way that no person could understand it. And your brain goes, why are you pitching it at the level that you're at when you're the only person that's at that level? And a little bit the same with sports betting. I excuse the ambulance that's going past. That might happen a couple of times. The same happens with sports betting. I don't know everything and I cannot know everything. But in order to be able to have a discussion with people about sports betting, I've got to at least try and concisely and clearly explain my thoughts in a way that others can understand. And yeah, I like that you brought that up, because I think it's a skill that is important and does need to be worked on to get points across. The earliest memory, I apologize for that. The earliest memory, if we move away from engineering, was a Ladbrokes poker, $5 or $10 satellite, probably the second or third online poker game that I'd ever played in my life. And we're looking back at 2002, 2003 these days. And there was a thing back in Ladbrokes poker where you could take money and just transfer it into US dollars, and then before midnight, either transfer it into pounds or not, depending on the way that the exchange rate had moved. And because Ladbrokes always set the exchange rate at 6 o'clock in the morning, you could guarantee that you could make money just by watching the markets. And a lot of people, and I was one of them, would do this. Just put your money and switch it between dollars and pounds. Bit of a cheesy way to make some money, but there was a lot of people that made a lot from that. And I just entered a poker tournament, and I didn't know how to play poker. And I won the satellite, which is no impressive feat. It was a satellite to $100 tournament. 1 in 10 people got seats. And I went into the $100 tournament, and I finished third out of about 4,000 people for $10,000. So I turned $10 into $10,000, and I thought I was the greatest poker player on planet Earth. I didn't realize at the time just how lucky I ran to get that far in the tournament. I mean, every single time I went all in, I won, no matter if I was ahead or I was behind. And that was my first sort of big win, my first exposure to gambling. I did think at the time, I'm the greatest. And this is because I was right at the beginning of the Dunning-Kruger curve. I didn't realize that I knew absolutely nothing at this moment back in 2002.
So just explain the Dunning-Kruger. Why'd you say that? What's it called?
The Dunning-Kruger effect is a cognitive bias where a lot of people at the beginning of a journey will gain a small amount of experience and think they are extremely competent. And you find this a lot in sports betting. A lot of match bettors learn that you can back and you can lay, and then you can hedge and you can arbitrage. And then all of a sudden they think they know absolutely everything that there is to making money. I've been doing this now for a long time. I'm fairly versed in statistics. And the one thing that I know is that there are probability distributions out there being used for football that not only do I know could be applied.
Someone is at the front door.
Somebody at the front door can wait. Not that only do I not know can be applied to football, but I don't even know exist. Like, I haven't even heard of these probability distributions. I'm fairly competent, but I'm aware of my limitations. Those at the beginning of their journey get a small amount of knowledge and think they know absolutely everything, and they overestimate their own ability. And as soon as you then realize how large the sphere of knowledge is in your particular area, how much you do not know, you go from thinking that you're extremely competent to realizing that you're sitting right at the bottom of the competency range. But at least you know that, and you can then work on your experience, your knowledge, and sort of start to build up your own competency.
So Tom, when you were doing well in 2002 in that run of poker wins, were you aware that it was somewhat a fabricated reflection of your skill set, or were you?
No, I thought I was the world's most talented, naturally born greatest poker player. And then
how did you reflect back then?
Well, I lost money. I mean, I didn't lose it all. I withdrew a lot of it and spent it, or used some of it for topping up my my university stipend back then. But I got really interested in gambling. I'm like, right, if I've got lucky, how do I repeat this? And I started buying books. There's a lot of books out there. Super System 2 by Doyle Brunson was some of those early books. A massive book, hundreds and hundreds of pages of just theory. And I'm looking at it going, oh my God, I presumed that I knew all of this. And I don't know any of it. And this is just one book. And there's loads of books. And not only are there loads of books, there was a thing called the 2+2 Poker Forum back in those days. An old forum where you would have different, sub-channels, and you could post your hands and talk about theory and talk about betting ranges. And I was quite statistically minded. So I quite enjoyed collecting a lot of data and plotting graphs and saying, if you did this in this situation, this is your realized equity. And I would post this, and some very clever, experienced poker player would turn around, usually Norwegian or Russian, and go, you've got this wrong, and you've got this wrong. And this is the feedback loop that you go through when you're learning. You're like, I've got an idea, I share my idea, and some may see it and go, that's a great idea. And others may go, well, you've got this wrong and that wrong. And it was this 2+2 poker forum that made a difference to me, because I started realizing if you share nothing, you get nothing back. If you share a little bit, you get into a dialogue. Sometimes you're sharing something that other people haven't thought of before. Sometimes you're sharing things that are wrong. I mean, it's the same as, in the field of academia, I would publish papers in an academic journal. And you do this so that it can be critically reviewed and the feedback can come back to you going, we accept this as a reasonable way of solving this problem, or it's a good idea, but X, Y, and Z is wrong. That doesn't mean the paper's bad. It just means that we can see issues with X, Y, and Z. You take a step back. You go, thank you very much. In the sphere of gambling in 2025, we're in a period just now where someone may say something and the natural instinct is to react with it by fraud or scam. And that's not a positive feedback loop. And that's not how I worked back in either the 2+2 poker forums. You wouldn't post an equity graph on the 2+2 poker forum back in 2003 and someone say you're a fraud or a scam. You've either got it wrong or you've got it right, but everything's based in data. So if I can just give you a quick heads up on how to make money if you have a time machine and you can go back to 2003. One, play ABC poker, just stick to very, very simple strategy. Don't, deviate away from the curve too much. And two, wake up early on a Sunday morning, because that's when all the Americans come home and they've been drinking and they're playing poker at 2:30 in the morning over in America, and you're playing poker with a clear head at 11 o'clock in the morning in the UK. And that simple concept was enough for me to pay my way through university just by playing a little bit of online poker.
I did absolutely that with the American market, no question. And so your first sort of bet was you didn't have any sort of sports bets, bet on the horses as a teenager?
Usual Grand National stuff. Loved the football coupons, but nothing wild. That I only started betting more than a pound a time, a £2 bet a time when it came to poker. And it was through poker, and it was through sitting in poker tables as well, that I got chatting to some people that introduced me to different forums. Again, these are long in the past. The RP, which is not the Racing Post, but I don't know what RP stood for back in those days. The RP Points forum, things like that. And on these forums, there was different groups of people. There were early arbitrage players. There was a lot of early casino guys. Back in the mid 2000s, I was told that you could sign up to a casino for £5,000, get a £5,000 matched bonus, and turn it over 10 times on blackjack. And I never did it, but people made millions out of that in the mid 2000s. It was an unbelievable amount of value. I was more interested in sports betting because with casinos, the realized equity is fixed, but there's something more attractive about sports betting. There's something more attractive going. There is no right answer to the odds of Belgium. Well, what have we struggled with this week? We've struggled with the odds of Liechtenstein to get a goal against Belgium. I think they're playing tonight. It's a really interesting problem, and nobody has an answer to what the expected number of goals for Liechtenstein this evening is, because it's such a rare event to happen. You have a team, I think Belgium are either 1.01 or 1.02, but there are other things in play. And when you look at casino offers and blackjack and even poker, it is Boolean. There are right and wrong answers. There is no such black and white when it comes to the probability of Liechtenstein getting a goal tonight. There's a range of opinions, but those range of opinions don't apply in casino offers and blackjack. You are either right or you're wrong. It's simple. It's more simple mathematics. So talking to these chaps, I got invited into a forum where I would continue to post equity graphs. And this was an element of the early days of chasing steamers, where we would take a football coupon and we would just identify the teams that had dropped in price the most out of the entire coupon. And I was invited into a big group of 25 of us in the early 2010s, and we really focused our early efforts on hitting football coupons in shops. Some of the lads were smashing them and then hedging their bet. The little subset of that group that I was in was more interested in compounding into trebles, quadruples, and seeing if we can, it's way more fun to lose a little bit and win a lot than it is to just constantly win a small amount. And that's always been the case for me. So yeah, that transition from poker over to sports betting, again, happened just from being on a few online forums and sharing these equity graphs and these ideas with the guys that were on it at the time.
Was there anyone, like a family member, that sort of sparked an idea when you were younger to sort of get into the risk-taking side of things?
Not a single one. The first person I think that I came across that sparked this imagination in my head was my current business partner, Duncan, who was very much into poker, but I think he got me into poker at the time as well, and has been kind of central in pushing me into new directions. And, so more so than a family member, I would say it's Duncan of bookie bashing that has been integral.
And a few minutes ago, you mentioned sort of the negativity that comes with saying that you can help people with their betting. And I think that is because there is a lot of fraudulent activity out there. So I do get it. But and you, like me, we distance ourselves from the word tipping. We don't like to say we're tipsters. So,
right. Yeah.
Talk to me about, tell me about what bookie bashing, what makes bookie bashing different from being a tipping service.
I mean, I was just thinking about this last night. I don't know why I was thinking about it, but I was thinking about how back in the day the Racing Post is a great example that will tip a horse. And I was thinking about it last night because we're toying around with a lot of NFL work in the background. Somebody was asking me about who's going to win in the first match this evening. And this is somebody that's not a friend, but not a gambler, not a bettor. And I was trying to explain to him the concept of I will never be able to beat the money line in NFL. Like, I could spend the rest of my life studying it. But I cannot do it because it's too hard. There's too much money. There's too many clever people in that sphere. So I've got to be aware that that's an area that I avoid. But I do know some subsets in NFL where they're a little bit less sharp and I can go after them. So I was thinking about people that tip up money line in NFL. How did they do that back in the day in the Racing Post, where you have to send the paper to the printers late at night, and then in the morning, there's everything has changed. There's way more data that's available, and whether it was NFL or whether it was horses, things change between a time that a paper goes to a printers and then people read the paper. Yeah. So I've never understood how tipsters can just go, I like this, because sometimes they don't even give a price, which means it's nonsense because everything has to come with a benchmarked fair odds that you think is the minimum that you should be betting at. If you cannot provide that probability at the time that you are talking, then you're a fraud. And secondly, the minute you've said it, new data is available. Yeah, and so you've got to keep people updated. And without software like bookie bashing and like your software that continually updates odds in the background, then what you've said becomes out of date at the very second that you've said it. And that's the sphere that I think tipsters inhabit. They're absolutely fine if they're winning at all. If you can get the bet the minute that they think that it's a good bet, then great. Other than that, I'm always very, very suspicious of anyone that claims to be a tipster, because I think there's a problem fundamentally with the whole tipping service.
Well, I'll tell you, with regard to that, one of the most common questions I get is, so we will put out a bet so yesterday we posted something at 13.57 on the 3rd of September, okay? Odds were 2.15. Now, it might go to 2.1, and I'll get a bunch of emails saying, it's 2.1 now, should I still back it? And I'd say, no, you should only back it at 2.15 at that point in time. If it goes out to 2.3, they're like, oh, it's a better price, should I still back it? I'm also like, no, it was a bet at 2.15 then. Whether it shortens or lengthens, it's a different bet.
But even worse than that, or similar to that, if you like, something could be a bet at 10-1 at 11:36 in the morning, as it is just now. And then at 11:45, it's no longer a bet at exactly the same odds. Yeah. And I can understand how that can be confusing for people. They go, you said it was a good bet 10 minutes ago. Yeah. And the only answer you have is, yeah, but in the last 10 minutes, I now have different data, and it's not a bet. And to the inexperienced person who is trying to come into the professional gambling sphere or profitable gambling sphere, and I can understand it, they might say, how can something be a good bet 10 minutes ago and a bad bet now? Because let's say I'd taken it 10 minutes ago, you're now saying I'm not making any money. And the thing that you have to understand is that nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows the price something's going to be in 10 minutes time. Nobody knows if it's going to be an even better bet or a worse bet in 10 minutes time. All you can do is deal with the information that is in front of you at any given point in time. Every single moment of your betting career is a Planck's constant for people that are familiar with physics. Okay, it is the smallest amount of time that you have. You stop the clock now, and this is the data that I have, and what happens in the future is almost irrelevant. Okay, we can talk about beating closing lines and things. Let's just park that for now. But you can only deal with the data that you have right now. If you could predict what was happening in 10 minutes' time, you shouldn't be value betting. You should be trading the market, and you probably just clean up. You'll take away all the money in a couple of days because you're that good at predicting price movement.
So bookie bashing, you call it advantage play rather than tipping, is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. Very much try and steer away from tipping, and couldn't settle on a particular definition for what we did. It was one of two, and we just went with both: advantage play and value betting. So value betting, a lot of people say that they do value betting, and if you interrogated them, they wouldn't be able to give you a concise definition. I wanted to give you a concise definition. It's really, really simple. Okay. Assuming you're backing, you are simply looking, when you're value betting, to be betting at odds that are higher than the neutral odds, the actual odds of the probability of the event happening that you've estimated in your model. That counts for singles, that counts for multiples. It counts each way, it counts win only. You just have to have any odds, commission has to be included in this if you're doing it on the exchange, that are higher than it goes by loads of different names: neutral odds, fair odds, actual probability, whatever you want to call it, the probability of the event happening. That's your value betting. Your advantage play is quite simple. The platform that you're using, you're getting an advantage on that platform, whether it's versus bookmakers, you're using information that is just better or quicker than the bookmakers have access to, or if it is on the exchanges, that's peer-to-peer betting. Somebody's put a price up. You're very confident that you're able to take that and beat it. So it's value betting and it's advantage play. Slightly different concepts, but they both apply to bookie bashing. Both, I think, apply exactly to what you do over at sharp betting as well.
Absolutely. Okay. And so away from the bookie bashing side of things and your own sort of personal betting over the years, is there one single bet that you pat yourself on the back to sort of say, oh, I did well there?
Yeah, I hate to regurgitate this. I feel like I should come up with a new one every single time, but I am. It's not so much the outcome of the bet, because of course this is now going to be after timing, which is the biggest crime possible in our sphere, as you know, being a massive after timer yourself, David, like I am.
I have a bit of time.
And so this has to be after timing because you're asking me about a bet in the past. But this is not more so the profit of the bet. In fact, I'm going to avoid talking about profits and just more about my mindset, because it was when I started to think differently about the outcome. And this was South Africa versus Japan in the, forgive me if I get the year wrong, 2018 or 2016 World Cup, whichever. Yeah, 2016.
2016.
And I think Anthony Kaminskis, I was talking to him about this, said he was working at Paddy Power at the time, and the line had been set at something like minus 50 points, maybe minus 49 points. So, South Africa were meant to absolutely run over this Japanese side. And I didn't have a bet pre-match, but I think on the exchanges, you could only lay South Africa at 1.01 and Japan were 200 to 1. And I watched the first 20 minutes of the match, and it was maybe 0-0 or just 3-0 after 20 minutes. But the one thing I did notice was Japan were really up for this match. They were tactically very, very smart. They weren't as big as South Africa, and they were losing out in the scrum. But everywhere else on the field, there was no dominant team. And then I look at the markets, and the markets still have Japan at 200 to 1 and South Africa at 1.01. And I'm thinking, does nobody else see what I'm seeing here? Like, why hasn't the smart rugby in-play traders move the market to reflect the fact that Japan are absolutely up for this game. So I took everything that I could over 100 to 1, 100, 150, 200 to 1. I just swept it all up. And as the game went on, there was no more than 7 points in it, all the way up to the end. And then Japan ended up winning the game. And so I thought, you reflect on that and go, what happened there? Up until that point in did you say it was 16 or 18?
2016.
Yeah, I think up until that point in 2016, I told myself an infallible truth that a lot of people actually in our sphere might tell themselves early on in their statistical modeling journey. And that was that I had told myself that the exchanges were as important an indicator of the prices you could get. And there was the wisdom of the crowds on there. There was a very interesting thing with a mathematician called the Marquis de Soy, who asked a crowd of 5,000 people how many sweeties are in the jar. And when they all guessed, they were right within just a handful of sweeties. He said, how can that be right? Because with the wisdom of the crowds, the best guess becomes very, very efficient. And I was under the false illusion that applied always on the exchanges. And I would say it still does on events like the Champions League, the Champions League final match odds. But it didn't apply in play for South Africa versus Japan. The exchanges were wrong. They were quite simply wrong. And I realized that all you had to do was watch the match.
Yeah.
And have confidence that what you're seeing can be applied into probability. And it was that moment in time. And by the way, I want a heap because you don't have to stake a lot at 200 to 1 to win a lot of money.
Crazy. I remember it well. I remember having the exact same feeling, and it's like 10 years ago, watching that match, thinking, what's going on here? These are not playing like the minnows that I'm told they are. And also, I think the wisdom of the crowd thing on Betfair, yeah, absolutely. On the exchanges, it applies most of the time. It's the unicorn events, and how are they unicorn events, or actually is something that can be exploited there?
Yeah,
but there definitely are.
Except for anyone listening, a little bit like Liechtenstein versus Belgium tonight. Listen, perhaps Belgium run through 10-0 and Liechtenstein don't have the ball. Perhaps it's going to end up, I don't know, as it should do, 4-0, 5-0. But you just don't know what the probability of Liechtenstein getting a penalty is tonight, because it's such a rare thing for two such mismatched teams to play against each other as it is. And for me, it's way more fascinating than Manchester United versus Arsenal.
Well, I'll tell you what, Tom, let's do two versions of this. You can give two predictions right now, and we just cut in the right one after the event tomorrow. We'll look like geniuses. No, okay, so look, I just want to circle back to the after timing. I don't think it's after timing when you put up the bets up front as well. I'm not just cherry picking. So, so what about when you've got it? And I'm also very open about, I got this one horrifically wrong. But so what about where you've that rugby bet is insane. Love that. 200 to 1, mental. What about when you've got one, you've been super confident and you've just got it completely wrong?
Yeah, well, generally what I hate, and it has to happen when you're modeling so much, but what I hate is when something simple has gone wrong in the data and you make everything value in that match. You need to stop and go, listen, if the entire market is saying X and I'm saying Y, Occam's razor would suggest that the problem here is with my modeling, not with theirs. There is a very small amount of occasions. Now, a hole-in-one in the Masters is one of these for me. I'm absolutely certain year on year on year on year, every single person has got that market wrong. I just think there's value in the no hole-in-one in the Masters every year. And every year they don't adjust the lines. They're slightly
what is the odds for that sort of thing?
I think it should be in the region of 1.5, 1.6, something like that. And you can get odds against. And the thing about the Masters is it's at Augusta. And that means that course is played over and over again. And unlike the US Open or the UK Open, where they switch around courses, they change the courses up. Even the same course, it's difficult to apply data from 2024 against a tournament that was in 2015. So sample size becomes a major problem for tournaments that aren't the Masters. But the Masters at Augusta, and we have a lot of data around exactly how many birdies or better on a par 3 there is on the PGA Tour. So what's better than a birdie on a par 3? It's a hole-in-one. That's the only thing that can be better than a birdie. And occasionally you do get fundamental changes. There was changes to the lofts of the irons in 2009 that all of a sudden all the data before 2009 can't be applied to after 2009. But one thing you can see is players aren't that much better on a par 3 than they were 25 years ago. Perhaps on the par 5s, there is evidence that they're driving it further, no matter what the PGA do to changes in club shafts and things like that. So par 5s, it's difficult to compare 2025 data to 2000 data. Par 3s, I think you can go back to the early 90s and that data is quite comparable, meaning we have a lot of data. And yeah, it just suggests, the only thing I can think of is that there's a handful, 1 or 2 odds compilers in this market, and they're just copying what they've done last year. Yeah. And I don't get why they're not looking at it a little bit more in detail, because the data is quite easy to find. And it just suggests that there are very, very rarely holes in one. So the hole in one should be a heavy odds on bet. So one to look out for next year.
This is the answer to my question. When have you got it like horrifically wrong?
Oh, right. Sorry. So that's an occasion where you look at the markets and you've got to be confident that you're right. Most of the time, if I'm completely different to the market and the markets, I do think something I've done is completely wrong here. And it normally comes down to an error in data. I bring in a lot of data, and for something like the NFL tonight, you can occasionally bring in data and you get the home and the away teams wrong. And as I remember, I was bringing in data I'm trying to remember the exact event. Again, it's rugby. It's a really obscure rugby match between France and Japan. I can't believe both of my answers were rugby because I don't bet that much on rugby, but my greatest bet now I think was rugby and my worst bet was rugby. And in this France versus Japan match, you had 2 cousins from Samoa with exactly the same name.
Right.
Well, one was playing for France and one was playing for Japan. And I hadn't noticed. And I have a model that brings that data in. And then all of a sudden, I make the odds of this one guy to score a try, like outrageous value everywhere. Now, when it's everywhere, I've got a team of runners and I get in touch with them and I say, can you go to William Hill? Can you go to Betfred? I've checked everything. This is right. Like, I'm right here. The market is wrong. Yeah. Max bet this guy, this French guy, to go and get a try in this game. And then we Max Kelly staked him and then a little bit more because we got a bit excited and we found ways of putting him into multiples. And then you sent the penny drops. Oh my days. I've brought in data from his cousin who's never going to score a try in a month of Sundays. And
is the cousin playing for Japan?
Yeah, the cousin plays for Japan. The guy that I'm betting on plays for France.
That's crazy.
And I thought the guy's odds were just incredible, but I brought in data from the other guy. And I hadn't noticed because they've got exactly the same name.
You see the Japanese guy come on, you're like, he's got the wrong shirt on. Change your shirt over.
But the penny drops. And what I hate about that is, because I'm in syndicates, if you were at Smart Bash this year, I never mind making a mistake. You'll make mistakes. And if it's in your own betting, listen, if you never made a mistake, then you would never actually push the envelope. You wouldn't push the boundaries of your own betting. Making a mistake is an inevitable consequence of trying out new things and doing things at scale. And in your own betting, if you were to say to yourself, I am never, ever going to lose a penny from a mistake, then you know that you wouldn't be where you are today, because that it's way too risk adverse. What I hate is I hate making a mistake and losing money for other people. And because I was in those syndicates, I was encouraging other people to put money down. And then all of a sudden, what I thought was a 300% EV bet is now like a 20% EV bet. And you have to turn around and go, sorry, lads. You know, by the way, the bet could still win. Obviously, it didn't. You know?
There's on the subject of like adults making mistakes, you came up with a fascinating statistic about this whole thing of roulette, or the toss of a coin having a memory. And I think you said that up until the age of 5, if you get 4 heads in a row, 5-year-olds are going to say it's definitely going to be a tails. They think that I think your phrase was the universe owes us a tails or something, right? And as adults, we realize that's not true. But I think you say that there are still 15% of adults that have that 5-year-old mentality about that random event. Is that right?
Well, this is something deep down ingrained inside all of us. It's a concept known as gambler's fallacy. And the gambler's fallacy is that cognitive bias again, that the universe has to balance itself out in terms of probabilities. And even I, this morning, might have had a thought before the Irish Open of going, I'll tell you what, I haven't hit a winner in a few weeks on the golf. And it's raining and I haven't looked at this tournament in a lot of detail because I've been away. And so the sensible part of my gambling brain goes, you're allowed to have a week off because you haven't paid as much attention to this as you normally would. And the gambler's fallacy part of my brain goes, but you haven't had a winner in a few weeks. And you know that if you don't bet on it this week, 100% one of those guys that you've shortlisted is going to win. You know that's going to happen. This is a nonsense part of my brain, but it happens to everybody. In fact, I think that you find, do you know who the best gamblers are in the entire world in terms of, we're talking about cognitive bias. I want to talk about the cognitive spectrum. Do you know who the best gamblers are? It is those guys with autism, Asperger's, your Dustin Hoffman and Rain Man kind of thing. And when you look at very high-level poker players, they're all very high on the neurodiversity spectrum. Yeah. And one of those reasons is they have the ability to switch off that part of your brain that is guilty of gambler's fallacy. And to just flesh out your story there about the toss of a coin, take a toss of a coin, flip it 5 times, ask a 5-year-old, is it going to be heads or tails next time? Most of them say the universe has to now say the tails, it's going to be tails, redress the balance of probability. Ask the 10-year-olds, you get a fewer percentage. Ask 15-year-olds, even a fewer percentage until you're an adult, and only 10 to 15% of adults will say it's got to be tails. The rest of them go, it's 50-50, it's an independent flip. And what you find is that 10 to 15% of adults that say it was heads, it has to be tails now. They tend to be the same 10 to 15% of adults that are in the betting shops. They've lost 5 horse races in a row. They really should just leave because they've bust their bankroll, but they're going to bet on the next horse race because the universe owes a redress of balance. And personally, I think the government and the Gambling Commission should really invest quite a lot on this, because you can walk up to someone and teach them and just snap them out of it and go, you know that what's about to happen in the Irish Open has absolutely no relationship to the fact that you didn't get the winner in the last 10 golf tournaments. Nothing. It's completely unrelated. You have the same probability as you did in the last 10 tournaments, assuming you're covering the same amount of field coverage. And that education, I think, could go a long way to addressing some gambling harm and reform out there. Yeah.
So did that rugby bet, the Japan one, that was obviously sort of a decent, like you say, you don't need much at 200 to 1. Do you still have like fun recreational bets on the side, or is everything you do looking for an edge, or can you have a bit of fun while you're watching a live event?
No, I can't have any fun watching a live event without it. I mean, I've found myself in a period of time, like I support Newcastle, and I've just been out in the south of France. We were at a beach bar, and Newcastle-Liverpool was on. What did it finish? Was it 3-2? And I didn't even watch it because I didn't have a bet on it. So I've got to a point where, and Neil Channing once said this, and it resonates very well for me. He was like, he can't just watch a horse race. He needs to put £20 down on someone just to have an interest to engage his brain. And I'm a little bit the same. If I'm going to watch a sporting event, I will often need to have something on it because I prefer to watch sporting events from a mathematical puzzle point of view. Kind of, what is the probability of something about to happen in this? And unless I've got sort of a token 20 on it, it's very, very difficult to be engaged.
I agree. And it doesn't even need to be 20. I can have a couple of quid on something that I know nothing about just to make it a bit of fun. And
Now, there are some people out there that might accuse you of being some sort of addict as a result of that. But for me, my counter to that would be that is the way, that is my entry, that is my way of stepping up into engaging my brain about it. And really, without the financial aspect to it, I would actually rather have nothing to do with it. I would rather be over here focused on the trees and the sky and the surf and birds.
Speaking personally, it's no more evidence of an addictive problem than me paying to watch a pay-per-view event or getting a couple of beers or whatever it is. It's, okay, this is part of my enjoyment. And I have serious betting and I have recreational betting, and I can enjoy them both and treat them both very differently. And
can I just say, David, you were at Smart Bash this year. One of the things I enjoyed getting from your talk, and I thought it was one of the best talks across the 2 days, was the way that you apply quite a lot of recreational betting when you are, if you like, what was your phrase? Bedding in accounts, bedding in book
priming
accounts. Would you necessarily, so let's just say Liverpool Newcastle's on tonight and you're thinking, I want to have a bet on it. When you're priming, is that just a good excuse to load up Sky Bet and just pick a request to bet at completely random in that game? And then you can switch the game on and go, well, I hope there's going to be 3 corners in each team and 10 booking points each.
100%. So I'm meeting someone this afternoon, a member who wants to go through some of these things. And literally, like these priming bets, the idea is that in the long run, you pay the margin and you lose a little bit. It's your fee for longevity. But sometimes they're going to win. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. It's very interesting you say this. There is quite a lot of, not everything has to be mathematically plus EV to be a good idea in the sphere that we're in. In fact, if you stick to this idea that 100.0 is the minimum that you're bet at and you're bet at 100.1 and over. We used to have a tagline at Bookie Bashing that I'm trying to phase out, betting at 100.1 and above. It was tongue-in-cheek and sarcastic, but actually I realized people didn't get that it was tongue-in-cheek and sarcastic. The point of that being is that you're on the lookout for your 140% and 150%. Do you know what 100.1? If you're telling me that you're betting at 100.1 and you're not betting at 99.9, then you're an idiot because you don't realize the uncertainty that there is with mathematical modeling. And it's this concept that in professional gambling, a little bit like if you were card counting, you can't strictly just be betting when the shoe is in your favor. You have to be losing a little bit when the shoe is in against you in order for the casino to allow you to sit there. And the same in sports betting, it's a game to be played.
Similarly with card counting, you've got a 1% edge tops in the lot. So you have to play for like 10,000 hands or whatever it is before that edge. So your 99.9 versus 100.1% edge, that will only materialize after, how many bets are you going to see a material difference in that?
Yeah. And that, by the way, sample sizes are another thing that I should have harked back to on the tipster thing. I don't understand how anyone could be a tipster and achieve the necessary sample size to overcome variance. If you're putting up 1 or 2 horses per day or 1 or 2 football bets per day, it could be 3 years. And the most important indicator about whether you're in profit or loss or not is variance, not how good the tipster is. It's variance. And then you have a survivorship bias of how many people are still following the losing tipster after 3 years. He could be the greatest tipster on the entire planet, but you have a serious volume problem at 1-2 bets a day.
Yeah, exactly. It's the old argument that Warren Buffett is just the luckiest.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
well, I mean, have you invested in gold this year?
No.
No, neither have I. But I keep seeing everyone say, why didn't you invest in gold at the beginning of the year? And the answer is because I had no idea that it was the commodity that was going to have the largest return on investment ever. And neither did you. And if you did invest in gold at the beginning of the year, shut up, you got lucky. And if you didn't, like me, then it's very easy to go back 1 year and go, what is the stock, share, commodity, or bet that has achieved the highest amount of return on investment? Yeah. For me, though, I know for a fact that just a regular 5% return on investment on singles and horse racing is extremely boring, but it's regular and it goes on forever. And that's enough for me. An interesting bit of feedback that I had was, why would I come and do horse racing at 5% when I could invest in Bitcoin and get 1,000,000% in Bitcoin? To which the simple answer is Bitcoin could go to 0 next year. My horse racing model with a return on investment should be 5% next year, unless all bookmakers decide that they're suddenly going to go fixed odds on the place.
I think we're beyond Bitcoin going to 0, but it could certainly plummet. And so my Bitcoin hedge was 10 years ago. I invested in not gold, but Visa and MasterCard. And in terms of diversify, and they are just beautiful things to invest in because they are just straight line, steady return. And while your crypto is doing this, your credit cards are just. Yeah.
Did you hear about the guy in Wales that threw away his hard disk and he's got his computer in a tip? And how much? I don't know. Is it worth like 500 million or something like that?
It was pizza money 20 years ago. It's now worth a gazillion.
I mean, crazy. I don't know how that guy wakes up in the morning. The first thing I would think of every single morning is, I've got £500 million in the tip down the road and they won't let me dig it up. It's like, anyway, breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, brutal. And okay, so short answer for this one, Tom, if you can. What is the total number of soft books you think you've been restricted by?
All of them. I don't really focus. I've stopped focusing on soft books a long time ago. I don't blame them either. Look, I mean, yes, it was a lot easier to profit from soft books 10 years ago than it is now. But look, everything's always easier 10 years ago than it was now. There were fewer people in our sphere, and data was less easy and information was less easy to transfer between all of us. As that becomes easier, more and more people do what we're doing. So, what did you ask me, David? Apologies, I've just slightly lost.
You answered it. Like, you've been restricted by all the books, basically.
Well, this is the thing. No, here's where I wanted to go with that. Around about 2016, I think around about that time that Japan South Africa bet was happening, I think I had to make the conscious decision. I'd always been interested in shops, and to this day I'm still doing very well in shops. I have I had a lucky 15 that was a £3 lucky 15 that like the week before the summer holidays returned £20,000, and I'm now, by the way, up for the It Didn't Happen of the Year Awards as a result of that. So I'm hoping to take that home as well. But so there's longevity in shops. One of the things with that message that I was trying to get across is there were three things. It was unusual because it's an unusual return for £90 to turn into 20,000. Okay, I mean that's 200 times X bet. It happens, but it's unusual. It doesn't happen a lot of the time. But I'd also not realized it had happened, which I thought was funny. I could have at any time looked at the horses on that bet slip, and I often do, but I didn't. And then I thought there was a lesson to be shared about the fact that I can still walk into a shop in 2025 and place a bet, and they take it from me. Yes, I have been knocked back a handful of times. Yes, I know a lot of people claim that they've been restricted, but like with you, you'll get a lot of people that go, you can't do what it is that you're doing. And you come at this, David, from a position of, all I'm doing is I'm trying to share with you how to do and make a little bit of money, because it is possible. And there is a bit of altruism in that. And you have to trust me that I'm altruistic, because I could just close up shop and keep all the information to myself. But I do prefer living a life where I share this thing, and if I can make a difference to a handful of people, then I will. And so I came at that tweet from that, and I did get quite a significant backlash. I wasn't ready for the backlash, but the reason why I go into the shops and bet is because I can't bet at Bet365 Sky Bet. I can't bet at William Hill. I can't bet at Betfred online. And so I've got two options available to me. I bet in shops until I'm told I can't. And in 2025, I haven't received the letter from any of them, so I haven't been told that. And I have to try and beat exchanges. And if you come to bookie bashing, there's plenty of value on our trackers to be had at soft bookmakers. And God bless you. I'm so jealous of you that you've got it, because if I had a Bet365, I wouldn't be anywhere near my local William Hill. But and how you get access to that is totally up to you and not up to me. And it is the easiest way of making money. But soft bookmakers are something that are long in the past for me, unfortunately.
So I just want to clarify, there's no altruism in what I'm doing. It's purely because we can't bet anymore. We made all we could from the system, and we bet vicariously through our members. We want them to succeed and do well, because that's great. It's good for us. It's good for them. But yeah, it's one of our members said we were philanthropists the other day, which I quite liked. I was like, no, we offer a free service, but we also offer a charge service. And the idea is that if you take it seriously, you pay for it, and you can make money, and that is evident. So yeah, I'm not going to claim altruism.
You have to offer some barrier for entry, because unfortunately there'll be one person out there with access to 1 million online accounts, and they'll simply take all of the money. So there needs to be a barrier, and if it becomes popular, you need to make that barrier for entry slightly harder. There's no such thing. You couldn't have, well, look what happened to Outplayed and Odds Monkey. They popularized their edge, and then their edge just disappeared. How they didn't see it coming, I don't know. But one thing that I will say for anyone that wasn't at Smart Bash, I mean, again, I really enjoyed your chat, but your way of bedding those accounts in, you only took one account at each soft bookmaker. And the figures that you quoted, you made an unbelievable amount of money. And I admired your systematic and structured approach. And it wasn't just totally believable. I was jealous that I hadn't thought of approaching soft bookmakers in the way that you had in order to make the amount of money that you did. So it was a really, really brilliant presentation.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, that's great. There was no sort of like one magic ingredient to it. So I would do I would go as far as spelling hello wrong when I spoke to customer services, right? I wanted them to, and it worked. I'd say hello, and they'd go, right, VIP club, do you want to join? And I'm like, they got you. Yeah. So like, but sometimes I would try all these things, and I'd have one bet that lost and then restricted. I was like, boom, they got me. Well, how did I do that? But other times, like we genuinely had 30, 40,000 pounds in some softbook accounts doing these things. So yeah, we know, and that's exactly, we did it for 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years at scale, and then we're like, right, we're getting restricted left, right, and centre. Let's make it available. And actually, on the barrier to entry from the costing, when we went live, I think we started selling memberships in April. Within a month, we increased our prices because our members were emailing us saying it's too cheap.
Yeah, exactly. We had the same thing, and I've actually stupidly used that as a counter argument to an accusation that we are somehow a scam service or we are fraudulent. And I am. It wasn't even me, actually. One of our members came on and said, "Did you know that I was part of their Discord? We had a Discord, we no longer do." And it was something people always said is like, you need to raise the barrier for entry. You need to. Some people were saying times 10 the subscription cost. I mean, and it's a fine balance. I mean, what do? Do you when you've got an edge like this, do you allow a lot of people access to it for £100 a month, or a handful of people at £1,000 a month? There's no, from our side of the fence, there's no clear answer.
Yeah. So Tom, you talked about that lucky 15, and I know that again, a lovely phrase you have is that when you compound the value in these sort of multiples, the product is greater than the sum of the parts, and that's exactly what you're doing there. So is there a...
That's not my... I stole that from a man that I went for a beer with a few weeks ago down in Worcester, Joseph Buckdale, a very clever guy.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a book, Monte Carlo or Bust, and in that he describes the idea of placing multiples as turning water into wine. You compound value, and the product is greater than the sum. Yeah,
100%. So yeah, we...
But let's caveat that, though. One of the biggest problems I see with people entering the value betting sphere is they've been sold a dream that you take 4 horses, stick them in a lucky 15, and hey presto, you make money. It's an unbelievably high variance, high volatility strategy. You are very much reliant not just on finding plus EV horses, but now for the stars to align on the same day. You can have 4 plus EV horses, but if they're on 4 different days and they win on those 4 different days, and your other 3 in the lucky 15 lose, then you're not going to have made any money. Whereas if those 4 horses, by the luck of the draw, were on the same day, then you're a millionaire all of a sudden. And so it's a high variance strategy, nothing wrong with it, but the amount of people that use it as their first stepping stone into value betting, and they go, I've been doing this for 3 months, I've placed nearly 1,000 horses and I've lost money. I don't blame them for wanting to quit. And to those people, I would suggest you have to understand that it's almost like you've started playing football and you've decided that your first opposition is going to be Barcelona. Let's not start with Barcelona. Okay, let's start with Oxford United.
What I do with that point is in the lucky 15, when you've got these 4 selections, and this is like what I tell everyone, is that the best result is you get 4 from 4. The second best result is you get 0 from 4.
Right.
Because you don't want to be, you, like you said, you want to get a bunch of 0s from 4, and then you get your 4 from 4 back to back, and then that's how the variance pays out. You don't, and I say that to people. It's like 0 from 4 is the second best result because we're more likely to get the full house. So what is your question when you meet people who are sort of into betting at an early stage? A question that would sort of reveal to you how much they know about sports betting.
I mean, I'm not going to name any names, but I brought on a professional, let's asterisks there, person that did football modeling onto my podcast a long time ago. And as far as I'm aware, there are 2 different ways of modeling football. The first is a strategy that Nick Goff and his syndicate uses, where you have a dominance rating. You say that Belgium are 4.2 goals better than Liechtenstein. And from that dominance rating, all of your expected goal score lines and everything drop out of that. The second thing is that instead of a dominance rating, you simply come up with the number of goals each team is expected to score in that game against their opposition. And from that, you can use a variety of probability distributions. The most simple one being Poisson.
Someone is at the front door.
And the but actually that's your entry level distribution. You have issues with Poisson distribution in football about under disposition and over disposition. If you get someone that tells you they're a professional football modeler and they can't give you a very basic outline of the probability distribution that they're using, a dominance rating, or what a Poisson distribution is, you can instantly separate the wheat from the chaff. Now, listen, I'm coming at that from the level of people that claim to be profitable modelers, bettors, and you can see right through them and they're not. Then you have a group of people that are following services like yours and like mine. And the next point I would put down to them is, are you up or are you down? And if they're down, so are you going to continue? And I need to hear from them something along the lines of, I'm going to wait until 1,000 bets. And I need to know that they understand that even short prices, 999 bets, really isn't enough to bet on to overcome sample size variance. And it's very common in people that are starting out to expect a return after 100, 200 bets. Actually, it's quite dangerous, I think, to place 100 bets and to be returning a 70% return on investment, because you suddenly think, I'm always going to be getting a 70% return on investment.
Well,
the
guy I'm meeting this afternoon, he's been with us for a week and he's on 40% ROI. And I want to say to him, calm down, just don't worry about that. Irrelevant.
Yeah. Although and I didn't learn this until quite far in as well. As Matt Trenhill taught me this. There is a relationship between return on investment and odds magnitude, a relationship that I've never particularly got my head around the mathematics of why it is. But when you're betting, an easy way to think of it is, and again, thank you, Joseph Bugdell, for explaining this to me over a beer a couple of weeks ago. When you're betting at 1.02 and you have an edge, it is impossible to have more than a 2% return on investment because you're betting at 1.02.
Yeah.
So if you flip that on its head, when you're betting at 100 to 1 and you have an early winner, it's quite easy to be way past a long-term expected return on investment. But that return on investment will, on average, be higher at 100 to 1 than it is down at 1.02. And so that's why when you're looking at betting at football at evens or match odds, a 3% or a 4% return on investment is incredible. And that's why sometimes when you're looking at golf betting, like at bookie bashing, our return on investment over the last 5 years is north of 30%, but our average odds are up in the 50 to 1, 60 to 1 region. And so there is that relationship that the higher that you're betting at, the odds-wise, the higher your return on investment should be expected to be.
Yeah, sure. So do you have, like, when you look back at your career from starting in the poker is there one piece of advice that stands out that you wish you'd given yourself, 20 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, don't sell your edge for £10 for the great sports offers back in 2015, 2016. You're underselling yourself by a factor of at least 100. Right. So that's a niche thing from an operator or a provider point of view, if you like. The one thing I think I didn't maximize is an age thing. How old are you, David? Do you mind me asking?
I will be 50 in 4 days.
I don't believe you.
Yeah, I get that a lot. I get that a lot.
Well, you're very, very. Do you ever? I'm not far away from you. I'm 48 coming up, and sometimes you see someone that's going to jail in the Daily Mail, and then it says they're 41. Yeah. There's no way that they're 7 years younger than me.
Yeah. And also in movies, it's like that 50-year-old man. It's like, that's now just a thing that is like obvious. And I'm like, I remember my dad's 50th. I DJ'd at my dad's 50th. It was like it was yesterday. And, I really wish you hadn't asked me, because I'm literally 4 days away from it.
As you get older, what you will know is it happens to everybody. It's very, very natural. Is your social circle starts to reduce for a variety of reasons, but plainly said, when you're 20 years old and you go to university, you have everyone from your halls of residence, everyone from your course, everyone in your sports team, everyone in your archery team, everyone in your World of Warcraft club that you're in, and the opportunity to meet people is almost limitless. And there's nothing better in value betting and profitable betting than setting yourself around with knowledgeable people in a syndicate. There are so many reasons why being in a syndicate helps longevity, maximize your profits, bring information in, toss around ideas and things like that. And back in the early days, we were quite insular. It was the six of us. We were the bookie bashers, actually, back in university. That's what we called each other. And we didn't let anyone in for a very, very long time. And I wish I had gone back there and made more of a concerted effort to widen the network that we had. And if I was... Now, the one thing I have to sympathize with 20-year-olds just now is I understand that there are legal deposit limits that bookmakers treat a 20-year-old with utmost suspicion, and it's a lot easier to bet higher as a 50-year-old than it is as a 20-year-old. Although I promise you this, it's still very difficult these days to bet high as a 50-year-old. But I can imagine the hurdles of getting £1,000 down at 10-1 as a 20-year-old are significant and a problem that has to be solved. That problem becomes markedly easier when you're surrounded by, you're in 3 different syndicates of 5 people each. You've got a lot of people, a lot of information, a lot of feedback into what you're doing from those people. And having help cannot be understated, but you have to be able to trust that, especially if you're in a gambling syndicate. I've known of gambling syndicates. I've heard of multiple gambling syndicates where all of a sudden one guy's won a lot of money and he just disappears on a sixpence and he rips off everybody else in the gambling syndicate. Trust is a very important part of that. I simply don't meet a lot of new people this year. And I don't know about you, but perhaps you might recognize that the reason for this is I'm getting older, and that happens as you're getting older.
But I mean, this sounds like this was teed up, and it absolutely wasn't. But that is why your event in the summer is so valuable. It's like I was there both days, and the social I met so many people that I wouldn't have met. Yeah, you can chat to them on Twitter, and you talk about the youngsters like Ollie Hubbard. I can't pronounce his surname, but young guy in his 20s, I'm sure. He was there, young guy, chatting to people with 20 years experience more than him, doing exactly what you were saying you wish you'd done at that age as well. So
I know that guy. He's got a good future in the value betting sphere. He really does, because he wants to connect and he wants to learn. And I'll tell you this, I mean, that already puts him in the 1%. Because 99% of people either think they know everything already, or if they don't know everything, they're not willing to connect with other people.
Yep.
So
he came up. He introduced himself to me at your event, and he'd seen something I'd done, and he knew a little bit about me. And I was like, God, you've actually done some due diligence here. I work with companies who have got insane budgets who don't do any due diligence, and yet this, like you say, he's in that 1%. Yeah, and okay, so is there anything that, not for you specifically, but anyone else who is watching this that is in their sort of early 20s that you would say, is it the networking thing? Just do that.
No, there's that. And then you've got to understand that once you've found yourself an edge, I would very much encourage not just using somebody like your service, David, or my service, but going out there and trying to find an edge for yourselves. You need a couple of things for that. You need historical data, because back testing is very, very important, and large amounts of data. You need to be able to control it. You need, I don't know if Excel is old school and if ChatGPT is going to allow people to crunch large data sets in the future without it. But I would have said up until now, Microsoft Excel was the single most important. If you don't have skills in that, I don't understand how you can beat sports betting. You can't do Monte Carlo analyses unless you've got a VBA or something like that. So you have to be able to be very confident in crunching numbers. Of course you do. This is a game of probability. I'm coming up with probability. Someone else has come up with probability. We're matching those two things together. And I'm just trying to value bet by placing a bet at odds that are higher than the probability that I have made that event of happening. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, once you've found that edge and you've started making money out of it, don't ever think that how you're making money today is how you're going to be making money in 2 or 3 years' time. Because there is a natural progression that once you've found an edge, even if you keep it to yourself, within a couple of years, some other people have found it, and then all of a sudden, loads of people will be doing it. Now, how have you been successful? I would say Ollie Hubbard and a couple of other guys who are quite young that I met at Smart Bash, where they sit is they sit at the top of the pyramid. They're finding these edges first, mostly by talking to people, networking, crunching the numbers. Then they hit this edge until other people find out about it. This is the tragedy of the commons. And all of a sudden, the edge becomes diluted. It may go away completely, but by then, they've moved on to the next thing. If you're the type of person that says, I used to get £1,000 down at 6 o'clock in the morning on a horse, and I would get best odds guaranteed and all the other offers, and now bookmakers won't take that bet from me, of course they won't, because whatever you were doing back then either you did it too much or too many other people found out about it. But either way, there was no way that edge was going to survive from 2015 to 2025. You adapt and you move on, or you die. And for any new guys coming into the game, go and find your own edge, an edge that nobody else is looking at. And when you've found it, hit it hard, and in the back of the mind, think, this isn't going to last forever. And so I need to keep on adapting and moving to be ready for the next thing.
And to that end, yeah, Excel skills, great. I'm a bit of an Excel ninja, but Python, these things move on. And yeah. So this is a chance. And I want to ask about your own site. So a two-parter here, Tom. So I want to say, what is the product that you're most proud of on your website? And also, if you're familiar with the sharp betting site, is there anything that you would sort of give me a pat on the back and say, I really like that, what you've done there?
So I have to say, I haven't joined and seen enough data on the sharp betting site. Site. I work a lot on feel, and I always had a good feel about you and Chris. You are knowledgeable, and I absolutely trust and know that what you're doing is not only above board, but it's profitable as well. So in terms of hours, the thing that I'm most proud about, and I will explain why. I'm trying my best not to drop too many names in this, but just now we're working very hard on NFL player props. What I find slightly frustrating, which has evolved over time, is if this was 2018, I'd tell you exactly what we were doing, because I've got a team, and it's really fun. I do enjoy this work, that are doing things like large data reviews of the number of unique touchdown scorers in a game, because we're fairly sure we have an edge. We have to prove it first before we push it live. And I would explain that in exactly what we're looking at and why we're looking at it. But now I think these days, unfortunately, we just push the edge live and we hope people find it. But I'm very excited about the upcoming NFL season in terms of both touchdowns and player props as well, which is where I look at an NFL way more than money line, which I don't touch. Yeah. But on the same thing, it was the player XG. I fundamentally believe, and this is looking 2-3 years down the line, that player bets have so much value in them for those that are willing to learn a little bit and have a little bit of knowledge themselves, because you can work out that there are probably going to be, I don't know, let's do shots, not shots on target, let's do shots. Shots on target, everyone's familiar with it. There's going to be 10.5 shots on target in this game. That 10.5 might change a little bit depending on if Haaland's going to start or not, but not a lot. Haaland starting or not isn't a major factor around there being 10.5 shots on target in this game. The major factor is Manchester City's historical record and the team that they're playing. Okay. So that 10.5 shots on target has to be distributed somehow amongst the starting 20 players, let's ignore goalkeepers, and the substitutes in the match. It has to be, right? Someone in that starting lineup has got 3 expected shots on lineup target. Someone's got 2, someone's got 1. And nobody's doing this really well just now. So it's this thing, and we call it normalization at Bookie Bashing, where you take the overall shots on target in the game, or, for player XG, we take the number of goals in the game, and we distribute it amongst the players that are in there. And we did this. And then I published a little picture of the player XG model with our XG for every player. And I published it on Twitter. And someone tagged one of the senior odds compilers at a firm called Ableton Odds. They've got a contract with Pinnacle. They provide Ladbrokes and a lot of UK bookmakers. They provide anytime goal scorer, first goal scorer. The head's odd compiler is called Jeeves Jaranathian. Apologies if I get his name wrong there. It's a Sri Lankan surname. It's difficult to pronounce. They tagged him and went, what do you think about that? And me and Jeeves, nice guy, just talked to each other. And generally, we agreed on the XG that was within each player. And I couldn't believe it, because they are the odds compilers that have been doing it for a long time. And independently, we'd come up with this model, and we were fairly close to them, and it gave me a lot of confidence. And the most outrageous part of this story is that he could have been in New York, Manchester, London, Berlin. I live in a little town in Worcestershire. He lives about 300 yards in that direction. And as I was talking to him on Twitter, I didn't know this. And when we found out about that, we both went to our local pub. I've met him quite a few times down at a local cafe. And we just get both of our models up and we talk about it. And I talk about probability distributions with him and things like that. And I haven't got everything right. I couldn't. But we got a lot right, and I'm quite proud of the potential of the Player XG model, which, as far as I understand it, I don't believe there is another tool out there that provides, professional gamblers and profitable gamblers with a model that gives up-to-date odds for any time goal scorer first, goal scorer 2+ and 3+. And I love personally the double delight at Hat-Trick Heaven at Betfred and go and smash that to pieces, because Betfred often will follow the exchange price, but I don't believe the exchange price is that accurate at all in what is essentially a recreational market. Most of the time, the lay is a value bet. Rarely the back is a value bet, but it can happen. And especially the first game of the season where both Haaland and can't tell you the second guy, but they not just scored first and they got a second goal. And if I can just blow my own trumpet with some after timing, it was a nice £3,000 profit just from double delight Hat-Trick Heaven on the very first weekend of the season.
Will you put a video out explaining that, or like how do people like get to understand like the mechanics of it?
There is. I'll tell you what. Yeah, well, I'll ask our marketing manager Vivi to tweet out the video that we have for Player XG. It is a little bit complicated, but if you weren't interested in the mathematics about normalization, about Poisson and underdisposition, you don't need to worry about all of that. What you can do is, actually, I very recently, just before the summer holidays, did a review of every single Betfair price in the English Premier League and the top 4 leagues in Europe. So I think it was like, off the top of my head, 12,000 players. Every single price against what I thought it was and which one was more accurate. And we have a video up on YouTube at Bookie Bashing about that. And if you want to go to @BookieBashNet on Twitter, I'll get my marketing manager just to repost that. So if you're interested, you can go and have a look. Lovely.
Okay, so is that Abelson, like Ed Abelson, the company?
I don't know.
Okay.
As far as I'm aware, Abelson was a small team in Birmingham back in the early 2000s who would price up different markets in football, but then they really specialized in goal scorer markets, AGS, FGS 2+, 3+. So I'm not entirely sure of the name of the guy that founded it. He's no longer part of the company. I think he retired a few years ago.
Okay. So final question, Tom, is, and you've done this a million times, I know, but I want a simple answer from you if you can. I'm going to give you a fair toss of a coin. I want heads or tails, and I'm giving you 5 to 1, and it's a one-off bet. How much do you transfer to me right now?
You're giving me 5 to 1 on heads and tails.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that because my answer now is much less than it would have been 10 years ago, 15 years ago. So my 2010 answer, my 2015 answer to you is likely 500,000. And my 2025 answer to you is 50,000. And one of the reasons for that reduction by 90% is that any more than that, and I do have the responsibility that whilst this is a gambling bankroll, it's also my children's future. Yeah. And if something ends up happening to me this afternoon, touch wood, I am not comfortable anymore losing sums of money that would make a tangible difference to my 9-year-old daughter's future. And so for that reason, the sum is a lot lower than it used to be.
Love it. Brilliant. You're the first person who's actually given me a hard figure without beating around the bush. So I'm pleased about that. So brilliant, Tom. Look, that was brilliant. I did say at the beginning that I did a little market on how long this would take. And I don't know if you can see it in the clock there, but I'm pretty good at this stuff.
Yeah,
so,
well, okay, yeah. I mean, not very...
yeah. And you can't call that after timing. I did call it at the start. I just saw you could.
I wrote that down.
All right, Tom, brilliant. So where do people find you? Twitter?
No, don't bother with me. I mean, I'm on Twitter, but I'm having an existential crisis on there. Don't come and look at me, talk to me, or engage with me in any way whatsoever there. Please do come and search for Bookie Bashing on YouTube, which is where we're going to be putting out the majority of our content. I'm going to try and get... I've done 233 episodes of the Bashcast, but only one this year. And I'm going to very much try and get another Bashcast out today and tomorrow. You can find that on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and everywhere else. And if you are interested in value betting and advantage play, you can pop over to bookiebashing.net. I recommend you play around with our results and watch some of the videos about what we do before signing up. There's a number of people that we don't want signing up. We don't want you if you don't have an understanding of value betting, if you need the money for your rent or your bills, if you are some sort of addict or anything like that. But if you're interested in a fun bit of investment, a little bit like gold and Bitcoin, then bookiebashing.net could be of interest to you.
Amazing, Tom. Brilliant. Well, glad to finally get you. We've been talking about it for a while, so really enjoyed that. And yeah, hopefully we'll grab a beer soon.
Yeah, definitely. Cheers, David.
All right, Tom. Cheers, man.